and welcome to the end of October. I cannot believe that we are hours away from November. The month flew by, and so I thought, since we're at the end of the month, what better time to talk about the books that obviously I read, but also as I was looking through my TBR, I realized that over half of the books that I read were from the library. So I thought I would also just add in my library haul from October. So without further ado, let's dive into the books that I acquired from the library and the books that I read. So I have two books that I have not finished, but I plan on finishing in the next couple of days, and the first book is In the Company of Witches by Airlie Wallis. This was the October pick for the Cozy Hollow Mystery Book Club. When I first started, I was really enjoying the banter and the sass that the aunts and the niece have. But then it's not as lighthearted as I was hoping it would be, and so I've kind of been trudging through it. So I do hope to finish it in the next couple of days. Honestly, may only give it another 40 pages for deciding if I'm going to finish it or not. So that is In the Company of Witches. And then the other book that I have not started, that is actually due on the 7th, so I have to start it really soon, is Recursion by Blake Crouch. This is a sci-fi thriller-esque book about memory and what would happen if memories were being tampered with. And I really enjoyed Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I enjoyed the writing and the storytelling and just the depth of the science that goes into it, and so I'm looking forward to reading this. I've had this out for the longest that you can have a book checked out from my library, and so I really do need to get this read, and I want to read it. But if I don't, then I will recheck it out at some point. But I'm hoping this is a little spoiler into my hopefuls for the end of the year. The next book is a book that I did not get to. I don't plan on getting to anytime soon, but I do want to read, and that is the first book in the Wingfeather saga, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, and it's a middle grade fantasy novel, and I did start this book during Bookathon. I've read like the first 10 pages. And I really enjoyed it, but I got burnt out on middle grade, and I just need to step away from that and read some, adult contemporary novels. And so I do want to read this because I think this would be a fun book to read as a family during car trips or whatever, but I want to vet it first to make sure that it's a good story, or all of that. So next book I actually did start it. I got about 150 pages into it during Bookathon, and that is Love, Sugar, Magic by Anna Mariano, and this follows, I think she's 12, 12-year-old Lenora, and her family runs a Mexican bakery, and this is set on Halloween, but then it focuses on the next day, which is the Day of the Dead, and the celebration that goes into that. And then she finds out very early on in the book that her family is hiding a secret, that they can do magic, and they put magic into their baked goods. And it sounded so cute and just so fun, and because she obviously wants to wield the magic, and then she thinks that she tries to take it on herself, and of course shenanigans happen, and of course things are probably gonna go down. But I just couldn't get past the fact that you have this 12-year-old girl who is in a Hispanic family, and everybody in her family speaks Spanish but her. And the reason why is that her abuela died before she was old enough to start really learning Spanish, and her abuela is the one that taught all of her sisters how to speak Spanish, and now she doesn't have her abuela around. I'm like, where is the mother or the father? Why are they, or her aunts, why are they not teaching her Spanish? And part of it is that Spanish goes into their family secret, and so it's not only are they hiding a secret from Lenora, but they're hiding a huge aspect of their family culture from her. And I I grew up, didn't grow up in a bilingual family, but I have a lot of friends and family that are bilingual, and the parents are just, they want their kids to know their heart language, and so they're teaching their children, making sure their children know this language, and they aren't using it as a way of hiding secrets. And I just could not get past that, because I felt so much for Lenora, that she's like, oh, I'm not good enough and I'm not smart enough to know the family secret because I don't know Spanish. And I just couldn't. And so I actually DNF'd this book, because even though the plot was cute and the storyline was cute, I just couldn't get past the family dynamics. So I am putting that one aside. Okay, so that ends the library haul of books that I didn't read or have not finished. So let's now get into the official October wrap up. So in the month of October, I read 5 books completely. If you actually think about it, I've read 120 pages and about 120 pages of this. So that is almost another novel if you look at it page-wise. The page total, I read almost 1,700 pages in the month of October. So I'm just so blown away by my achievement. Because if you watched my September wrap-up, I talked about how it's unheard of for me to have read even 4 books last month. And so to read 5 books this month, and almost technically 6, I'm just so proud of myself that I have put aside more time to read than I have in the past. And honestly, it's part of it is because I have 2 kids, and so it's really hard to find motivation to read when I have time for myself. So anyway, let's get into the books that I finished in the month of October. The 2 books that I finished during the Bookathon, the middle grade spooky readathon during October, were Small Spaces by Catherine Arden, and this book follows, what is her name, Ollie, and she stumbles upon this strange woman who is about to throw a book into the river, and she rescues the book because she's a big book lover. And then just some really weird things start happening, and she ends up going on this field trip, and the bus breaks down on the way home, and really spooky things start happening. And the warning that she is given from the bus driver is to keep to small spaces. And I have to say that for a middle grade book, I was a little terrified at points. I'm like, this may be a little bit more spooky than I can handle. But it ended up being a really fantastic novel. There were points of it where I was like, okay, where are we going with this? But just the overall feel of the book just was really great. I loved that it really did make me like scared, and it was really fun for that. It was scary enough that it was enjoyable. I think any more than that I would not have enjoyed it. So I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the other book that I finished during Bookathon was The Ghoul Next Door by Cullen Bunn and Kat Ferris. This is a graphic novel about this boy who befriends a ghoul, and then he has to go on an adventure to the underworld to save his friend. And I enjoyed it. I would have liked a little bit more plot, but I do have to say, for a middle grade graphic novel, if you are 12, there's plenty of plot. But as an adult, I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a really great time reading it, flew through it. So I would recommend it definitely for middle grade readers who are looking for a graphic novel. And it has really fun art, and it is a good story. And I just wanted, for me as an adult, wanted more for it. But again, if you're a middle schooler, you probably have enough plot in it, and you will enjoy it even more than I did. So that is The Ghoul Next Door. So then the last book that I got from the library that I finished in October is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. And I actually haven't read anything from this author who wrote Glass Hotel and what is it, Station 11. But now I want to read all of her novels. This this is a sci-fi-esque, maybe a little bit of fantasy thrown in their book about time travel and about society and family and humanity, and it's just so good. It's very interesting how it is broken down, and I do have to say that it's broken down into different sections, and in each section it has chapters, and each section is a different time in the timeline. And I have to say it took 3 sections to really get into it. Kind of like, I really felt like we were building up to this point and then we were going back down. And once I got to the 3rd section, about halfway through that, I could not put it down. It was so good. And I ended up giving this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, mainly because it did take a little bit to get into the book. And so this is a book that I read for my In Life book club, and we all really enjoyed this novel. Also had the same thought that the first timeline didn't really serve a purpose, and it really did confuse us, and it kept us from really getting into the story quicker. I highly recommend this book. If you have read anything by Emily St. John Mandel, or if you haven't, definitely pick this book up. It's so good. So good. The last 2 books that I'm going to talk about were not library books. They were books that were on my physical TBR, but these books have been on my TBR for years. And the first book is the illustrated edition of A Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. I have read the Harry Potter series multiple times, but I had never read Goblet of Fire in the illustrated edition. And as the other 3, the illustrations, they were beautiful. I mean, look at that. Just, it really did enhance the story. The only problem I had with reading it in this edition was this book is so heavy. And so I couldn't read for long periods of time because I had to sit on my couch with it propped open on my lap. And it's just, that's not a great reading, like, because you're like this. And so if you constantly have your head down, it's like, yeah, neck problems. Anyway, so there were times where I'm like, I just want to get my other edition out to read in between, like, the pages that didn't have any illustration. Other than that, this book was an experience. I haven't read Goblet of Fire since becoming a mom. And I'm not going to give any spoilers because I know not everybody in the world has read Harry Potter. There is several scenes at the end that never made me cry, but now that I am a mom, I was like bawling tears. And I also, like, I haven't read this book, I think, since I've been in my 30s. And so reading this book for the first time when I was in high school, and then throughout my 20s, the story hit different than it did now in my late 30s. Like, I related to different characters in ways that I never related to them before. And even though, like, I've always enjoyed this story because I love the game aspect of it, I enjoyed this book even more than I ever have. And I think part of it is really that I just had an emotional experience at the end. And I'm just so excited to read the next 3 books in the series as a mom and in my late 30s and just a different stage of life, and just to see, will I react the same? Do I, still feel the same way about the storyline? Like, Order of Phoenix is my least favorite book in the entire series. Whenever I do a reread, or I have done a reread of the series, I dread getting to that book just because it's not my favorite of the series. And so I'm actually looking forward to reading it and seeing, do I feel the same now that I am in a completely different stage of life? So, oh my goodness. It was such a good experience, and the illustrations, So good. And I'm excited because the 5th book illustrated edition is out. And so I will probably ask for it for Christmas because they are more expensive than I want to spend on one book. So good Christmas present. And so then maybe in January I will pick the series back up. So the last book that I'm going to talk about has actually been on my shelf for at least since 2016, if not 2015 or 2014, and that is From the Start by Melissa Tagg. This is your quintessential romance set in small town, Hallmark-esque type book. I was actually over halfway through this book when the Gilmore-a-thon readathon was announced, and I was so sad because this is like the perfect book for that readathon because it's set in a small town, it's set in autumn, it has family drama, it has a love story with, you know, drama in it, it has second chance, it's, you know, it's everything that is a romance Hallmark movie is this book. And the funny thing is that Kate, the main female character, she is a writer, and she wrote one novel, and then she moved on to writing screenplays for basically Hallmark. I can't remember what the network is that is in the book. It's not Hallmark, it's named something else, but it is Hallmark. Anyway, so she writes screenplays for this movie channel, and, you know, she's obviously writing romance novels, but her last screenplays have not been doing well. They have been rejected, and she's just at a block. She just can't figure out what to write next. She feels like she needs to write something that's more meaningful because our love story is really meaningful. And then enters Colton, who was an NFL star quarterback and then gets injured, and that injury takes him out of the game. And he has, you know, this life, you know, like midlife crisis, you know, at 25 or 30 or however old he is, and he doesn't know what to do with his life because his whole life centered around football. And then he ends up in this small town to help after a storm, to help repair this small town. And of course, it's where Kate's family is, and so she's back in the small town, and they form a friendship, and it follows them both trying to figure out what are they going to do with their life. How are they going to have a meaningful life? What can they do now that what they feel like was their calling has now almost been ripped out of them? And so I enjoyed it. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought overall it was good. There were some aspects that just felt unnecessary or just underdeveloped. And then of course you have that moment of miscommunication, and that's like the trope that I absolutely hate. It's like, okay, you're adults, and I think they are in their like 30s. Yes, they're in their 30s. And so you have had enough life experience that you know what miscommunication is. And so you have a conversation with the other person of like, okay, this is what you said, but is this what you meant? And it just drove me nuts. Some people love that. They love the miscommunication trope, but I hate it in every book and in every movie. And if an author has miscommunication, but then does it in a different way than, you know, the two characters walking away from each other after the miscommunication and not actually having a conversation until a third party comes in and says, hey, is that really what they meant? Do you think that maybe you misheard them or misunderstood? And so that is what happened, and it's very typical. But it was still enjoyable, and as any romance Hallmark-esque book, movie, I enjoy it, even with all of its flaws. And so I do recommend this book. It is a Christian author, and so there is some Christian-esque moments in it, but it doesn't feel like in your face. And so if you just want like a very sweet romance without all the steam, I definitely recommend from the start. So those are all the books that I acquired from the library in October and read during the month, and it was just a great month. I just enjoyed it. It flew by. So let me know down below if you've read any of the books that I read in this month. If you have a favorite that you would like to share, I would love to hear it. If you have any cute romance books that would be great for the Gilmoreathon, please give me recommendations down below, because my TBR is very, very small right now on the cute romance. So with all of that, guys, I hope you had a great October. I hope you had a great reading month. And as always, I will see you on the flip side. Bye!